Okay, we're going to be doing lesson 8.4, which is called special products, or you might hear me refer to it as special cases. We're still going to be working on the FOIL method. It's just now we're going to look at some very specific cases. It's called perfect squares. So if you look here, we're going to have perfect squares, and we're going to be looking at what happens if we have a perfect square with a sum and perfect square with a difference. The other thing we're going to look at is what's called difference of squares. So DOS, sometimes you might hear it referred to, but difference of squares, and we're going to take a look at what that is, okay? So today is just basically a lot of foiling, but we're going to look at very specific examples of types of problems. All right, so zooming in here on square of a sum. Okay, for square of a sum, you are going to have sum means addition, so you're going to have A plus B. This is just an example. We'll look at some actual numbers here in a minute. But since I have the word squared, it means I'm going to square it. Now, this square is really important. It means write it out twice. And we'll write that a little bit later in our notes, okay? But A plus B plus A plus B, that squared means there are two of them. So now, when you're working on this type of problem, just remember you're going to technically be foiling. So you wrote it out twice, and then you're going to take A times A and A times B. And so you can see I've got A squared plus AB. Then I'm going to take A times B. Now, I went ahead and put AB. But if you put BA, same thing, and then B squared. Now, like always, you've got to clean it up. So we're going to end up with a 2AB there in the middle. Okay? Now, let's kind of zoom down here, and we're going to look at square of a difference. So notice, if I kind of zoom in here a little bit, notice how this and this are exactly the same, except for the word difference means subtraction. Okay? So when I take the time to FOIL this out, after I write it out twice, I end up with A squared minus AB, another minus AB, again if you put BA that's okay, and then a negative times a negative would be a positive B squared. So I get down, I simplify the middle, and I get a negative 2. So now if you're looking at this, notice here up at top I've got a positive 2AB, and down here I have a negative 2AB. So they're pretty much the exact same thing, except for the middle part will be negative, okay? So just as a reminder, keep in mind that that squared means write it out twice, and then we're just going to FOIL. All right, now the last type that we're going to look at today is called difference of squares, okay? And difference of squares is where you actually have the same thing wrote out, but one's a plus and one's a minus. Difference of squares. Again, you are still doing FOIL, so you have A squared minus AB plus AB, and then minus a B squared. Again, I'm going to combine like terms, but in the middle here, this negative and positive are actually going to cancel out, and all I'm going to be left with is this A squared minus B squared part, because all of this right here is going to cancel out. All right, so now let's drop down here and let's take a look at some examples. So it says, find each product and identify what type of special product each problem is. Okay? So now if I'm looking at this, okay, first thing we talked about, in fact we're going to go ahead and write it in here, that squared, okay, this guy right here, okay, means write it out twice. Okay, so with that being said, I'm going to have 6p minus 1, and I'm going to have 6p minus 1 again. Now you're going to do some foiling. So I'm going to go ahead and take 36p squared minus 6p minus 6p, and then a plus 1. So I get 36p squared minus 12p plus 1. Okay, and this is going to be my answer. All right, so now kind of coming back up here, we're looking at which one of these three is it. So is it a perfect square sum, difference, or is it a difference of squares? Okay, well in this case, if we kind of come back down and look, it's a perfect square because it has the square on it, and since it's subtraction, that means it's a difference. Okay, so we're going to write that this is a perfect square. Okay, so I've got perfect square, and I'm going to call it a difference. Okay, and you can abbreviate. All right, so now I'm going to go to the next one here, and I'm going to go ahead and start foiling this out. Now, please understand that this is the same thing as a perfect square with addition, because if I chose to, I could rewrite it as 7x plus 2 squared. Okay, so there are two of them. It's just they're already wrote out twice. Okay, so I start foiling. So I've got 49x squared plus 14x plus 14x plus 4. So 49x squared plus 28x plus 4. Okay, so again, since I have the same thing wrote twice, that's a perfect square. Anytime I have two identicals, that means perfect square. So I've got perfect square. And since it's addition, I'm going to put sum. Okay, all right, now this one is called a difference of squares. Okay, because if I look here, I have the same thing, but one has a plus and one has a minus. Okay, so when I FOIL, that middle should cancel out if I've done it right. So when I multiply, I get 81d squared minus 36d plus 36d. Oh, and then I'm going to take 4 times negative 4 and get negative 16. Again, this middle right here should cancel, which these do. So I have 81d squared minus 16, okay? And so the name difference of squares actually comes from the ending part. If I look at this, I have a difference, and I technically could take the square root of both of those, and we'll talk more about that later in this chapter. But difference of squares, same thing, but one has a minus, one has a plus, okay? So difference of squares. Okay, I want you to go ahead and pause this video now, and I want you to try to do 4, 5, and 6 on your own, and then I want you to go ahead and push play again and see if you got them right. Okay, so now you should be looking at number 4. You should have FOILed this out, so you should have took the 10g times the 10g and got 100g squared. 10g times negative 13h squared would be 130gh squared. All right, so now take the 13 times the 10 again. And then this time you're going to get a positive 130. And then the last part here, take the negative or 13h squared times the negative 13h squared. And when you do that, remember you got to add the exponents. So that's how I'm getting h to the 4th here. That's a negative 169 in front. Again, the middle cancels. So you're left with 100g squared minus 169h squared. Now, since these were the same thing, but one was a plus and one was a minus, it's difference of squares. Okay? All right, moving on to number 5. Okay, same thing, since there's the same problem up here. Okay, it technically means that it's a perfect square, so I just put PS for perfect square. It's a difference because there's subtraction in the middle. Okay, and so then I went through and took 6e times 6e, 36e squared. 6e times negative 6f is negative 36ef. Do the insides here, negative 36ef, and then negative 6f times negative 6s is a positive 36f squared. So now put the middle together because they don't cancel, and you get negative 72ef. And on number 6, okay, this is a perfect square, and it's a sum, okay, because you have plus. And remember, this squared means write it out twice. I FOIL and get 49y squared, 14y, 14y, and a 4. And then again, I put the middle together and get 28y. All right, let's move to the next page. All right, so this guy right here says find the area of a circle. And so what we have to think about first is what is the area of a circle? What's the formula? Again, if you don't know it, we should be looking that stuff up. So in this case, area equals pi r squared. So when I do the area, again, I'm going to leave pi on my problem. I'm not going to change it to 3.14. And I've got 3x minus 2 squared. Now, just like we were taught, that squared means write this guy out twice. So I actually have pi times 3x minus 2 times 3x minus 2. So I have pi. I'm going to FOIL this out. So when I do that, I get 9x squared minus 6x minus 6x plus 4. I'm going to clean it up a little bit by combining like terms right here in the middle. And I'm going to get 9x squared minus 12x plus 4. Now, again, leave the pi there. Don't do anything with it. I can't simplify anymore here. Okay? So the last thing I'm going to do is label it units squared since it's area. Okay? All right, so now you are going to complete the following in your book. I want you to do Lesson 8-4, page 1143, you're going to do 1 to 6 all and 8 to 11 all. You may complete it on the bottom of the sheet or do it on a separate piece of paper. Thanks.